billionaire CEO attended his dad's funeral on New Year's Eve. He froze when he saw his ex-wife with twin sons he never knew about. The cathedral doors swung open, letting in a gust of winter air. Dominic Blackwood glanced up automatically, then felt the world stop spinning. There she stood, Eliza, snowflakes melting in her dark hair, her face older but achingly familiar. 5 years of silence since their divorce. But she wasn't alone. Flanking her were two small boys in matching navy suits, with dark curls and serious expressions. They couldn't be more than 4 years old. They couldn't be. The realization hit him with physical force. The timing, the resemblance. Those eyes, amber like his own, like his father's, the distinctive Blackwood trait. Twins, his sons. Sons he never knew existed. Dominic. His assistant's concerned voice barely registered. Are you all right? He wasn't all right. Nothing was all right. His father was dead. His ex-wife had appeared with children who could only be his, and the carefully controlled world he had built was suddenly spinning off its axis. I sent letters, Eliza would tell him moments later, her voice tight with years of disappointment. 3 of them. They came back unopened or unanswered. After the 3rd try, I decided your silence was answer enough. Have you ever wondered what happens when a man who has everything, money, power, success, discovers what he's been missing all along? What would you do if you suddenly found out you were the father of children you never knew existed? And what if this revelation came on the day you buried your own father, when your world was already crumbling beneath your feet? Hi, my beautiful sisters. This story touches on something so many of us understand. The strength it takes to raise children alone, to build a life on your own terms, and to protect your heart after it's been broken. Eliza's journey reminds us that sometimes the most powerful choice a woman can make is to walk away from a relationship that diminishes her worth, even when it means facing an uncertain future. Her dignity, her resilience, and her unwavering commitment to her children's well-being reflect the quiet courage that so many women demonstrate every day. As we explore this story together, I hope you'll see yourself in her strength and remember that your value is never determined by someone else's ability to recognize it. If you've ever had to rebuild your life or make difficult choices to protect your peace, this story is for you. Please like this video if you've ever had to be both mother and father to your children, or if you admire the women who do. The last place Dominic Blackwood expected to confront his past was at his father's funeral. Snow fell in delicate flurries outside the grand cathedral, dusting the shoulders of mourners as they filed inside. New Year's Eve, a time for reflection and new beginnings, now forever marked by an ending. Richard Blackwood, industrial titan and ruthless businessman, was dead at 73, leaving behind an empire, a complicated legacy, and a son who had spent a lifetime seeking his approval. Dominic stood at the front of the church, his tall frame rigid in a perfectly tailored black suit, accepting condolences with practiced composure. At 42, he had mastered the art of emotional restraint, a skill learned at his father's knee. As CEO of Blackwood Industries, he had transformed his father's already successful company into a global powerhouse worth billions. The business pages called him brilliant, ruthless, visionary. None mentioned lonely. Your father would be proud, murmured an elderly board member, clasping Dominic's hand. Dominic nodded, the practiced response automatic. Would he, though? Richard Blackwood had never been easy to impress, his praise as rare as desert rain. Even Dominic's most spectacular business triumphs had been met with measured nods and immediate questions about the next challenge. Never enough. Never quite right. The cathedral doors opened again, letting in a gust of winter air and another group of mourners. Dominic glanced up automatically, then froze, his carefully maintained composure shattering like thin ice. Eliza. She stood in the doorway, snowflakes melting in her dark hair, her face older but still achingly familiar. 5 years had passed since their divorce. 5 years since she had walked away from their marriage with nothing but her dignity intact. 5 years of silence. But she wasn't alone. Flanking her were 2 small boys, identical in their solemn little navy suits, with dark curls and serious expressions. They couldn't be more than 4 years old. They couldn't be. The realization hit Dominic with physical force, stealing his breath. The timing, the resemblance, the boy's eyes, amber like his own, like his father's, the distinctive Blackwood trait that had marked their family for generations. Twins, his sons. Sons he never knew existed. The cathedral seemed to tilt around him, the murmurs of mourners fading to white noise. Across the space between them, Eliza's eyes met his, and in them he read confirmation, challenge, and something else he couldn't quite name. Dominic. His assistant's concerned voice broke through his shock. Are you all right? He wasn't all right. Nothing was all right. His father was dead. His ex-wife had appeared with children who could only be his, and the carefully controlled world he had built was suddenly spinning off its axis. Excuse me, he managed, moving away from the receiving line with as much dignity as he could muster. He needed space, needed air, needed to process the impossible scene before him. Retreating to a small antechamber off the main cathedral, Dominic braced himself against a stone wall, his mind racing. Twins, his children Eliza had never told him about, had kept hidden for years while he built his empire, attended board meetings, closed deals, and filled the emptiness of his life with work and more work. The door opened quietly behind him. He didn't need to turn to know who it was. You had no right, he said, his voice low and tightly controlled. I had every right, Eliza replied, her voice softer than he remembered but with the same quiet strength that had first drawn him to her. You made your choice, Dominic. I made mine. He turned then, facing the woman who had once been the center of his world. At 38, Eliza was still beautiful, though different from the young art curator he had married. There was a new confidence in her posture, a serenity that hadn't been there before. My choice? I never chose to be kept from my own children. Didn't you? Her gaze was steady, unflinching. When you chose your father's approval over our marriage. When you chose board meetings over anniversary dinners. When you chose to become exactly the kind of husband and would-be father that you once swore you'd never be. The accusation stung because it carried the sharp edge of truth. Their marriage had crumbled under the weight of his ambition, his desperate need to prove himself to a father who saw vulnerability as weakness and compromise as failure. You should have told me, he insisted, though the righteousness in his voice sounded hollow even to his own ears. I tried. 2 simple words, laden with years of disappointment. The day I left, I told you I had something important to tell you. You said the Tokyo merger couldn't wait, that we'd talk when you returned. 3 weeks later, your lawyers delivered divorce papers to my apartment. The memory surfaced unwillingly. He had been so angry when she left, so wounded by what he'd seen as her abandonment. The divorce had been a preemptive strike, a way to regain control of a situation that had made him feel powerless. And afterward? For years, Eliza. For years of my sons' lives. I sent letters. 3 of them. To your office, your home, even through your mother. They came back unopened or unanswered. She crossed her arms, not defensively but as if holding herself together. After the 3rd try, I decided that your silence was answer enough. Had there been letters? He vaguely remembered his assistant mentioning correspondence from Eliza that he had refused to look at. Too raw from the divorce, too consumed with proving that he didn't need her, that he was fine on his own. Why are you here now? He asked, the question that mattered most. Your father reached out to me 6 months ago, she said, surprising him. He hired a private investigator, found out about the boys. He came to see them, to see me. Dominic stared at her in disbelief. His father had known? Had seen his grandsons while Dominic remained ignorant of their existence? He was dying, Eliza continued. He said he had regrets. About you, about the way he'd raised you. He wanted to know his grandsons before he died, and he wanted... She hesitated. He wanted them to know their father, too. He asked me to bring them today. The revelation was staggering. Richard Blackwood, admitting regrets? The man who had taught Dominic that looking back was for the weak, that forward was the only acceptable direction. "The boys," Dominic said, his voice rough with emotion he couldn't suppress. "What are their names?" "Alexander and Nicholas." A small smile softened her features. "They go by Alex and Nikki. They're 4.5. Do they know who I am?" "They know their father is a businessman who builds things. They know he's been away." Her expression grew serious. "I never lied to them, Dominic. I never said you abandoned them or didn't want them. I just simplified a complicated truth." A complicated truth. That was one way to describe the tangled mess of their past. The love that had turned to resentment. The dreams that had withered under the harsh light of reality. "I'd like to meet them," he said, the words emerging before he could consider their implications. "Properly, I mean." Eliza studied him, as if weighing his worthiness for such a privilege. "They're not a business acquisition, Dominic. They're little boys with feelings and needs. They're not here to fill some void in your life or continue the Blackwood legacy." The assessment was so accurate it felt like a physical blow. Wasn't that exactly what children had always represented in the Blackwood family? Vessels for ambition, carriers of legacy, extensions of ego rather than individuals in their own right? "I know that," he said, though in truth, he wasn't sure he did. What did he know about being a father? His own had been a distant figure, demanding excellence but offering little warmth. Was that all he had to offer these boys he hadn't known existed until moments ago? Before Eliza could respond, the door opened again, and a small face peered around it. One of the twins, Dominic couldn't tell which, regarded him with solemn curiosity. "Mom? Grandma Margaret says it's almost time for the service." Eliza turned, her expression softening. "Thank you, Alex. I'll be right there." So this was Alexander, his son. Dominic stared, drinking in details. The serious set of the boy's mouth so like his own. The curious intelligence in those amber eyes. The way he stood, straight-backed and composed, at an age when most children would be fidgeting. "Is that him?" Alex asked, his gaze fixed on Dominic with unnerving directness. "Is that our dad?" The question hung in the air between them, simple yet impossibly complex. Dominic felt stripped bare by it, by the innocent expectation in his son's eyes. "Yes," Eliza answered softly. "This is your father." Alex considered this information with a gravity that seemed beyond his years. Then, with the straightforward acceptance that only children can manage, he said, "Grandpa Richard said you build really tall buildings. Taller than the clouds. Is that true?" Dominic found himself kneeling, bringing himself to eye level with his son. "Some of them are very tall," he confirmed, "but not quite as tall as the clouds." "That's what I told Grandpa," Alex said with a small nod. "Clouds are too high up, even for buildings." A laugh escaped Dominic, rusty and unfamiliar. When was the last time he had laughed genuinely? "You're absolutely right. We have to go sit down now," Alex informed them both. "Nikki's saving our seats. He says we have to be good because it's a sad day." "It is a sad day," Eliza agreed, moving toward her son. "We'll be right there, sweetheart." As Alex disappeared back through the door, Dominic rose to his full height, feeling strangely unsteady. He's perceptive, serious, too grown up for 4. Eliza supplied. "Yes to all of that. Nikki's the opposite. All energy and questions and laughter. They balance each other." Dominic tried to imagine it. 2 small boys, extensions of himself yet entirely their own people, growing and changing while he remained oblivious, chasing his father's approval even as that father secretly visited the grandsons Dominic didn't know he had. "After the service," he said, finding his voice. "Could we talk? Really talk?" Eliza hesitated, then nodded. "We're staying at the Westbrook Hotel, room 712. Come by at 7. She moved toward the door, then paused. "I'm sorry about your father, Dominic. Whatever else he was, I know you loved him." As she left, Dominic remained in the antechamber, trying to gather the composure he would need to get through his father's funeral. The irony wasn't lost on him. Richard Blackwood, who had shaped Dominic's life with his demands and expectations, had orchestrated this final revelation from beyond the grave? Had it been an act of reconciliation, of atonement, or one last lesson for a son who had spent a lifetime trying to earn his father's approval? If you've ever had a moment that changed everything, a revelation that made you question the life you've built and the person you've become, hit that like button. And if you believe in second chances, in the possibility that it's never too late to become the person you were meant to be, subscribe to Timeless Love Tales with Mr. Harrison. This story of unexpected fatherhood and redemption is just beginning, and you won't want to miss what happens next. The answer, Dominic suspected, lay in the letter his father's attorney had given him yesterday, still unopened in his breast pocket. He had been avoiding it, unwilling to hear his father's final assessment of his worth. Now, with trembling fingers, he broke the seal. Dominic. The letter began in his father's precise handwriting. By the time you read this, I will be gone, and you will have met your sons. Yes, I've known about them for some time. No, I don't expect you to forgive me for keeping this from you. Dominic paused, the words blurring momentarily as he processed this confirmation. His father had known, had deliberately kept this knowledge from him. I recognized myself in you too clearly. The ambition, the drive, the willingness to sacrifice everything for success. I taught you those values, molded you in my image, and watched you exceed even my expectations. You became everything I wanted you to be, and in doing so, you made the same mistakes I did. The cathedral bells began to toll, calling mourners to take their seats, but Dominic couldn't stop reading. I lost your mother's love to my ambition. You lost Eliza to yours. I was an absent father. You've been no father at all. The words cut deep, their truth undeniable. The difference is that you still have time to change. Alexander and Nicholas are extraordinary boys. They deserve better than the father I was to you, better than the father you were on track to become. Dominic could almost hear his father's voice, the rare moments of genuine emotion breaking through his usual reserve. My final wish is not for the company, not for the Blackwood legacy, but for you to break the cycle. Be the father I never was. Build something more meaningful than towers of steel and glass. The last lines were written with a heavier hand, as if his father had pressed down with particular emphasis. This is not a request. It is a challenge. Prove me wrong about you, Dominic. Prove that you can be more than my echo. Your father, Richard. Dominic read the letter twice, then carefully folded it and returned it to his pocket. The bells continued their solemn call, and he knew he needed to take his place at the front of the church. He straightened his tie, squared his shoulders, and prepared to say goodbye to his father. But as he stepped back into the cathedral, his gaze found Eliza and the twins, seated midway down the aisle. Alexander, Alex, sat straight-backed and solemn, while his brother, Nicholas, fidgeted slightly until Eliza gently stilled him with a hand on his knee. For the first time in his adult life, Dominic felt the stirring of something beyond ambition, beyond the need for validation or success. It was terrifying, this sudden awareness of all he had missed, all he stood to lose if he couldn't change the patterns of a lifetime. As he moved to take his place at the front of the church, Dominic made a silent promise, not to his father's memory, but to the two small boys watching him with curious amber eyes. He would find a way to be worthy of them, to be more than Richard Blackwood's echo, more than the driven, emotionally stunted man he had become. The service began, voices rising in hymns of mourning and celebration. Outside, snow continued to fall, covering the old year's mistakes in pristine white, offering the clean slate of beginnings even in the midst of endings. New Year's Eve, a time for resolutions, for change, for the courage to step into the unknown. As Dominic rose to deliver his father's eulogy, he caught Eliza's eye across the cathedral. Something passed between them, not forgiveness, not yet, but perhaps the possibility of it. A recognition that the complicated truth of their past had created something precious in those two small boys, something worth fighting for, worth changing for. His father was gone. His sons were here. And Dominic Blackwood, for perhaps the first time in his life, understood exactly what was at stake. The eulogy Dominic delivered was not the one he had prepared. Instead of the carefully crafted tribute to Richard Blackwood's business acumen and legacy, he spoke of a complicated man who had taught him determination and resilience, but who had also, in his final act, taught him about regret. "My father built an empire," Dominic said, his voice steady despite the emotion threatening to break through. "But today I learned that even he questioned whether the cost was worth it. He leaves behind not just a company, but a challenge, to build lives of meaning beyond balance sheets and acquisitions." From her seat in the middle of the church, Eliza watched with surprise. This vulnerability, this public acknowledgement of imperfection, was unlike the Dominic she had known. The twins sat quietly beside her, Alex studying the stained glass windows while Nikki's attention remained fixed on the man at the podium, his father, though he was too young to fully comprehend what that meant. After the service, as mourners gathered at the Blackwood estate for the reception, Dominic found himself moving through condolences and conversations on autopilot. His mind was elsewhere, on room 712 at the Westbrook Hotel, on the conversation that awaited him, on the two small boys who had upended his carefully ordered world. "You seem distracted," observed Victoria Blackwood, his mother, appearing at his side with a glass of whiskey. At 70, she remained elegant and perceptive, having survived 30 years of marriage to Richard before their amicable separation a decade ago. "I assume you've met your sons." Dominic turned to her sharply. "You knew too." Victoria sipped her drink, unruffled by his accusation. "For about 4 months. Your father swore me to secrecy. He said it was his final lesson to you." "A lesson in what?" "Manipulation, control from beyond the grave." "In consequences, Dominic." Her gaze was direct, unflinching. "In what you miss when you prioritize the wrong things. Richard recognized himself in you, and contrary to what you might believe, he didn't consider that entirely a compliment." Dominic drained his own glass, the whiskey burning a path down his throat. "So I'm told. He left me a letter." "Good. Then perhaps you'll understand why I agreed to his request. Those boys deserve to know their father, and you deserve the chance to be more than Richard's shadow." She set down her glass. "Eliza is a remarkable woman, you know. She's raised those boys beautifully, built a life for them without bitterness or resentment. That takes extraordinary strength." "She should have told me," Dominic insisted, though the argument felt increasingly hollow. "Perhaps. But you should have listened when she tried." Victoria's tone softened. "Don't make the same mistakes your father did, darling. He spent his last months trying to make amends for a lifetime of putting the wrong things first. Don't wait until you're dying to realize what matters." With that, she moved away to speak with other guests, leaving Dominic alone with thoughts that refused to settle into any coherent pattern. The reception continued around him. Quiet conversations, shared memories, the subdued atmosphere of collective grief. But he felt disconnected from it all, as if he were watching from a distance. At 6:30, he made his excuses and left, instructing his driver to take him to the Westbrook Hotel. Snow was falling more heavily now, transforming the city into a hushed, white landscape that matched his contemplative mood. Room 712. He stood outside the door for a long moment, gathering courage he hadn't known he needed. This wasn't a business negotiation or a hostile takeover. There was no strategy he could employ, no leverage to gain the upper hand. Just the raw, uncomfortable truth of his failures and the terrifying possibility of redemption. He knocked. Eliza opened the door, changed now from her funeral clothes into jeans and a simple sweater. Behind her, he could see a hotel suite transformed by the evidence of children. Small shoes by the door, colorful backpacks on a chair, a tablet playing some animated show on mute. "You came," she said, stepping back to let him in. "I said I would." He entered cautiously, feeling like a visitor in a foreign country, unsure of the customs or language. The twins were sitting on the floor of the suite's living area, building something elaborate with magnetic tiles. They looked up at his entrance, their identical faces showing different reactions. Alex's thoughtful assessment, Nikki's open curiosity. "Boys," Eliza said, her voice gentle but firm. "You remember meeting Mr. Blackwood at the church? He's going to talk with me for a little while." "In the grown-up room?" Nikki asked, the first time Dominic had heard his voice. Lighter than Alex's, more animated. "Yes, in the bedroom. You two keep building your space station, and we'll be right through that door if you need anything." Dominic followed Eliza into the adjoining bedroom, where she closed the door partway, leaving it open enough to hear the boys if needed. The intimacy of the setting, a hotel bedroom, with Eliza, brought unwelcome memories of happier times, of the easy connection they had once shared before ambition and resentment had eroded it. "They're incredible," he said, because it was true and because he didn't know how else to begin. "They are." Eliza sat on the edge of the bed, gesturing for him to take the armchair opposite. "They're smart, kind, stubborn as hell sometimes. They're their own people, Dominic. Not extensions of us, not blank slates. They came into the world with personalities already forming. I've missed so much." The realization hit him with fresh pain. First steps, first words. "Yes, you have." Eliza didn't soften the truth with platitudes. "But they're only 4. There's still so much ahead, if you're serious about being in their lives." "I am." The response came without hesitation, surprising him with its certainty. "I don't know how to be a father, Eliza. God knows I didn't have the best example. But I want to learn." She studied him, her expression guarded. "Why? Because they're Blackwoods? Because they're your legacy? Or because they're Alex and Nikki, 2 little boys who deserve a father who sees them for who they are?" The question cut to the heart of everything. His motivations, his capacity for change, his understanding of what fatherhood actually meant. 6 hours ago, he hadn't known these children existed. How could he claim to want them for themselves when he didn't even know them? "I don't have the right answer," he admitted finally. "I want to know them. I want to be part of their lives. Is it partly because they're my blood? Yes. Is it partly because my father's death and his letter have forced me to reconsider everything? Also yes." He leaned forward, meeting her gaze directly. "But I saw them, Eliza. For just a few minutes, I saw them, and something shifted. I can't explain it better than that." Eliza's expression softened slightly. "That's actually a better answer than I expected." "What did you expect?" "Some variation of 'they're Blackwoods' and entitled to the advantages of that name. Or perhaps, 'I have a legal right to my children.'" She shrugged. "The Dominic I was married to would have approached this as a negotiation or a legal challenge." The assessment stung because it was accurate. 5 years ago, even 1 year ago, he would have responded exactly as she predicted, with entitlement, with legal threats, with the full force of his power and influence. "I'm not that man anymore," he said quietly. "Or at least I'm trying not to be." "Because of your father's death?" "Because of everything. His death, his letter, seeing you again. Seeing them." He gestured toward the partially open door, beyond which they could hear the murmur of the twins' conversation as they played. "I've achieved everything I ever thought I wanted, Eliza. The company is more successful than even my father dreamed. I have more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes. And none of it means anything." The admission hung between them, more honest than he had intended, more vulnerable than he was comfortable being. Eliza's expression remained neutral, but something in her eyes softened further. "What are you proposing, then?" she asked. "Practically speaking, I don't know," he admitted. "I've had about 12 hours to process the fact that I'm a father. I haven't gotten to the practical details yet." A small smile touched her lips. "That might be the most un-Dominic Blackwood statement I've ever heard. You always have a plan." "Not for this." He ran a hand through his hair, a rare gesture of discomposure. "Where do you live now? What's your life like? I don't even know the basics." "We live in Portland. I'm the curator at the Westlake Museum of Modern Art, a smaller institution than where I was when we met, but they've given me incredible freedom to build their collection." Pride colored her voice. "The boys go to Montessori school. They're thriving. We have a small house with a garden. It's a good life, Dominic." He tried to picture it, Eliza and the twins in a modest house, so different from the luxury they could have had as Blackwoods. She had walked away from their marriage with nothing, refusing the settlement he had offered out of pride or principle or both. Had she struggled? Had there been moments when she regretted her choice? "I want to be part of their lives," he said again, more firmly this time. "I'll relocate Blackwood's West Coast operations to Portland if that's what it takes. I'll buy a house there, something close but not intrusive. We can start slowly, supervised visits, whatever makes you comfortable. I need this chance, Eliza." She was quiet for a long moment, considering. "It won't be simple. They don't know you. Building trust takes time. And I won't have them disappointed or confused by a father who appears and disappears according to his business schedule." "I understand." "Do you?" "Because the Dominic I knew put work above everything. Above our anniversary, above my gallery opening, above the fertility treatments that were supposed to help us conceive the children I apparently managed to create without medical intervention after all." There was an edge to her voice now, the first hint of the pain she had carried. The reminder of those missed appointments, those broken promises, landed like a physical blow. How many times had he rescheduled, canceled, prioritized a meeting or a deal over the wife who had once been the center of his world? How many times had he justified it as necessary, as temporary, as for their future? "I was wrong," he said simply. "About all of it. About what mattered." Eliza's eyes widened slightly at the admission. The Dominic she had known rarely acknowledged mistakes, never admitted fault. Before she could respond, the bedroom door pushed open wider, and Nikki appeared, clutching a magnetic construction that resembled a lopsided spacecraft. "Mom, Alex says my rocket isn't aerodynamically feasible, but it's not supposed to be real, it's just pretend, right?" His indignant expression was so earnest that Dominic felt an unexpected surge of affection. "Imagination is just as important as physics," Eliza assured him, her tone shifting seamlessly from the tension of adult conversation to the patience of motherhood. "Why don't you show your rocket to Mr. Blackwood? He builds things too." Nikki turned to Dominic, suddenly shy but extending the magnetic creation nonetheless. "It's a space rocket that can go to Jupiter," he explained. "Alex says the shape is wrong, but I think it looks cool." Dominic accepted the construction carefully, examining it with exaggerated seriousness. "The most important thing about design is that it solves the problem you're trying to address," he said, finding himself speaking to his son as he would to a young architect in his firm, without condescension. "Is your rocket supposed to be fast or carry a lot of astronauts?" "Fast," Nikki declared. "Super, super fast." "Then I think the streamlined shape is perfect," Dominic concluded, handing it back. "Sometimes the people who change the world are the ones who don't follow all the rules." Nikki beamed, clutching the rocket. "That's what I said." He turned back toward the living room. "Alex, Mr. Blackwood says my rocket is good because it's streamlined," Dominic supplied. "Streamlined," Nikki repeated triumphantly, disappearing back through the door. When he was gone, Eliza regarded Dominic with a new expression, something between surprise and reluctant approval. "That was good," she said. "You didn't talk down to him. He's clearly intelligent." "Why would I? You'd be surprised how many adults can't help themselves." She sighed, then seemed to come to a decision. "We're staying in the city until January 3rd. If you're serious about this, about being part of their lives, we could meet tomorrow. Somewhere neutral, like the Children's Museum. Let them get to know you a little before we try to explain who you really are." The offer was more than he had dared hope for. A first step toward something he hadn't known he wanted until today. "Thank you," he said, the words inadequate for the magnitude of what she was offering. "I'll clear my schedule. Any time that works for you." 10 o'clock, she said. "They're morning people. And Dominic." Her expression grew serious again. "Don't make promises you can't keep. Not to them. They've had a stable, secure life. If you enter it, it has to be for good, not until something more important comes along." The warning was fair, the concern legitimate. The man he had been would have bristled at the implication, would have defended his intentions with arrogance rather than humility. But standing in this hotel room, with the sound of his son's voices filtering through from the next room. Dominic found himself nodding in acceptance. "I understand," he said. "And Eliza, thank you for bringing them today, for giving me this chance. I know you didn't have to." "No, I didn't," she agreed. "But your father was right about one thing. They deserve to know you, and you deserve to know them. What happens next is up to you." As Dominic left the hotel room, the weight of that responsibility settled on his shoulders, heavier than any business deal, more consequential than any corporate merger. Tomorrow he would begin the process of becoming someone new. Not just Dominic Blackwood, billionaire CEO, but Dominic Blackwood, father. The snow had stopped falling, leaving the city transformed under its pristine blanket. Tomorrow would be the first day of a new year. A clean slate, a beginning. For the first time in longer than he could remember, Dominic felt something like hope. Have you ever had to completely reimagine your life in a single day? To look at everything you thought mattered and realize you've been chasing the wrong things all along? If this story of unexpected fatherhood and second chances resonates with you, hit that like button and share your thoughts in the comments. And if you want to see how Dominic navigates his first real day as a father to twins who don't know him, subscribe to Timeless Love Tales with Mr. Harrison. The journey is just beginning, and I promise you won't want to miss what happens next. Dominic barely slept that night. In his penthouse apartment, surrounded by the trappings of success. Awards, expensive art, the panoramic view of the city he had helped reshape. He felt strangely disconnected from the life he had built. For the first time, he saw his home through different eyes. There was nothing here for children. No warmth, no color, no evidence that this space belonged to a human being rather than a corporate entity. He spent hours researching Portland, the Westlake Museum where Eliza worked, Montessori education, and finally, hesitantly, parenting resources for fathers of preschool-age children. The information was overwhelming, the terminology unfamiliar, the expectations daunting. How did anyone learn to be a parent? Was there a manual, a course, a certification he could obtain that would prepare him for tomorrow? By morning, Dominic had made 3 important decisions. First, he would relocate Blackwood's West Coast headquarters to Portland, a move he'd been considering for business reasons anyway. Second, he would find a house there. Not a mansion or penthouse, but something warm and welcoming, with a yard where children could play. And third, he would approach today not as Dominic Blackwood, CEO, but simply as a man meeting 2 extraordinary little boys who happened to share his blood. The Children's Museum was bustling with activity when he arrived, 15 minutes early. Families moved through colorful exhibits, children's laughter echoing off high ceilings. Dominic felt conspicuously out of place in his tailored coat and polished shoes, surrounded by parents in casual clothes chasing excited children. "You look terrified." Eliza's voice came from behind him. She wore jeans and a green sweater, her dark hair loose around her shoulders. Beside her stood the twins, bundled in matching blue coats, their amber eyes taking in the museum with different expressions. Alex's measured assessment, Nikki's barely contained excitement. "I am," Dominic admitted, surprising himself with his honesty. Eliza's expression softened slightly. "That's actually reassuring. Fear means you understand the stakes." She turned to the boys. "Alex, Nikki, you remember Mr. Blackwood from yesterday?" "From the church," Alex confirmed, studying Dominic with that unervingly direct gaze. "You liked my rocket," Nikki added, bouncing slightly on his toes. "Mom says you're going to play with us today." "I'd like that very much," Dominic said, kneeling to their level despite his expensive suit pants. "I've never been to this museum before. Perhaps you could show me your favorite exhibits." "The water table," Nikki exclaimed immediately. "You can build dams and make the water go different ways." "The construction zone is better," Alex countered. "You can design buildings that don't fall down during earthquakes." Dominic glanced up at Eliza, who was watching the interaction with guarded hope. "Both sound fascinating," he said to the boys. "Why don't we start with the water table, since it's closest, and then visit the construction zone?" Nikki beamed triumphantly at his brother, who shrugged with surprising maturity. "That's logical. Closest first is more efficient." As they moved through the museum, Dominic found himself relaxing incrementally. The boys led the way, Nicky darting ahead while Alex maintained a more measured pace, occasionally reaching out to redirect his brother's enthusiasm. Eliza walked beside Dominic, close enough to intervene if needed but giving him space to interact with the twins. At the water table, Dominic rolled up his sleeves without hesitation, helping Nicky create an elaborate system of dams and channels. His hands, accustomed to signing contracts and manipulating spreadsheets, were clumsy at first with the small plastic pieces, but he found himself enjoying the challenge, the immediate feedback of success or failure as water followed or defied their design. "You have to account for the flow rate," Alex explained seriously, joining them after observing for several minutes. "If you make the channel too narrow here, it will overflow." "You're absolutely right," Dominic agreed, impressed by the boys' understanding of basic hydraulics. "What if we widen this section and create a reservoir here?" Working together, they created a complex water system that drew admiring glances from other families. Dominic found himself laughing at Nicky's delight when they successfully diverted water through their creation, and feeling an unexpected surge of pride at Alex's methodical problem-solving. "You're getting soaked," Eliza observed, amusement in her voice as water splashed onto Dominic's shirt. "Worth it," he replied, and meant it. The construction zone proved equally engaging. Here, Alex took the lead, explaining the principles of earthquake-resistant design with remarkable clarity for a 4-year-old. Dominic contributed his own knowledge of structural engineering, simplified but not dumbed down, and was rewarded with Alex's rare, thoughtful smile when their collaborative tower withstood the simulated earthquake better than any other. "You really do build things," Alex said, regarding Dominic with new respect. "I do," Dominic confirmed, though usually with steel and concrete rather than foam blocks. "Do you like it, building things?" The question was simple but profound. Did he like it? Had he ever stopped to consider whether the empire building that consumed his life brought him joy? "I like solving problems," he answered honestly, "creating something that wasn't there before. But I think I've forgotten to have fun with it, the way we just did." Alex nodded, as if this made perfect sense to him. "That's sad. Mom says work should have some joy in it, or what's the point?" Out of the mouths of babes. Dominic glanced at Eliza, who was helping Nicky with his own, more whimsical construction. "Your mother is very wise." By lunchtime, Dominic had participated in a science experiment, helped create a collaborative mural, and been thoroughly schooled in dinosaur facts by an enthusiastic Nicky. His suit was rumpled, his hair slightly disheveled, and he couldn't remember the last time he'd felt so present, so engaged in the moment rather than planning 3 steps ahead. They ate in the museum cafe chicken nuggets and apple slices for the boys, sandwiches for the adults. Dominic watched, fascinated, as Eliza automatically cut Nicky's food into smaller pieces while reminding Alex to use his napkin. The choreography of parenting, the 1,000 small gestures of care she performed without thinking, humbled him. "You're very good at this," he said quietly while the boys were distracted by their food. "I've had 4 years of practice," she replied, but there was no bite to her words. "It wasn't always this smooth. There were plenty of nights I thought I couldn't do it, especially when they were babies. You did it alone." It wasn't a question but an acknowledgement, heavy with unspoken regret. "Not entirely alone. My mother helped when she could. And I found a community. Other single parents, neighbors who became friends." She met his gaze directly. "I made a life for us, Dominic. A good one. I can see that." He hesitated, then added, "I want to be part of that life, if you'll let me. Not to disrupt it, but to contribute to it." Before she could respond, Nicky tugged at Dominic's sleeve, his face earnest. "Mr. Blackwood, do you know how to make paper airplanes? The really good kind that fly super far?" "I do, actually," Dominic said, grateful for the interruption. "My grandfather taught me when I was about your age. Can you show me? Please." Nicky's expression was so hopeful that Dominic felt something shift in his chest, a protective tenderness he'd never experienced before. "Of course." He reached for a napkin, folding it with precision. The secret is in the balance. Too heavy at the front, and it nosedives. Too heavy at the back, and it stalls. As he demonstrated the technique, Dominic was aware of Eliza watching them, her expression softening. Alex, initially skeptical, soon joined them, offering suggestions for aerodynamic improvements that Dominic incorporated with genuine appreciation. The afternoon continued in this vein, moments of connection interspersed with the natural awkwardness of strangers becoming acquainted. By 4 o'clock, the twins were showing signs of fatigue, Nikki's boundless energy finally flagging, Alex's questions becoming less frequent. "We should head back to the hotel," Eliza said, gathering their belongings. "They still need some quiet time before dinner." Dominic nodded, surprised by his reluctance to end the day. "Of course." As they walked toward the exit, Nicky slipped his small hand into Dominic's without ceremony. The gesture, so simple and trusting, nearly undid him. He glanced at Eliza, who looked equally startled but gave a small nod of approval. Outside, snow had begun falling again, large flakes drifting lazily from a pearl-gray sky. Nicky immediately tilted his face upward, trying to catch snowflakes on his tongue. Alex, more practical, pulled his hat lower over his ears. "I had a really fun day," Nicky announced, still holding Dominic's hand. "Are you going to come play with us again tomorrow?" The question hung in the air, weighted with implications. Dominic looked to Eliza, unwilling to make promises without her approval. "Actually," she said carefully, "I thought perhaps Mr. Blackwood might join us for dinner tonight, at the hotel, if he's not too busy." The invitation surprised him. "I'd like that very much. And tomorrow too?" Nicky persisted. "We'll see," Eliza hedged. "Remember, we're flying home to Portland the day after tomorrow." "You could come to Portland," Alex suggested, his logical mind working through the problem. "They have airplanes that go there. I've been on them." Dominic suppressed a smile at the boy's earnest solution. "That's very true. And as it happens, I need to visit Portland soon for business." "When?" Alex asked, direct as always. "Very soon," Dominic promised, meeting Eliza's gaze over the boys' heads. "Sooner than I had planned." That evening, dinner in the hotel suite was a casual affair. Pizza ordered in, the boys in pajamas, a children's movie playing quietly in the background. Dominic, who had gone home to change into more casual clothes, felt like he had stepped into an alternate universe, one where board meetings and quarterly reports were replaced by discussions about favorite dinosaurs and whether pineapple belonged on pizza. Nicky was emphatically for, Alex scientifically against. After dinner, as the twins became increasingly drowsy, Eliza announced it was bedtime. To Dominic's surprise, both boys asked if he would read them a story. "Just one," Eliza stipulated. "It's already past your bedtime." In the bedroom the boys shared, Dominic sat awkwardly on the edge of one bed, a picture book about space exploration in his hands. Alex and Nicky snuggled under their respective covers, watching him expectantly. "You have to do the voices," Nicky instructed sleepily. "Mom always does the voices." "I'll do my best," Dominic promised, opening the book. He had never read a children's story aloud before, had certainly never done the voices. But he found himself fully committing to the performance, deepening his voice for the mission commander, adopting a slight mechanical tone for the robot assistant. The boys watched with heavy-lidded attention, Nicky giggling at the funny parts, Alex correcting Dominic's pronunciation of astronomical terms. By the final page, Nicky was asleep, his face peaceful in repose. Alex fought valiantly against drowsiness, determined to hear the story's conclusion. The astronauts returned to Earth, forever changed by their journey among the stars. Dominic read softly. "For once you have seen our planet from space, you understand that we are all travelers together on this small blue marble, floating in the vastness of the cosmos." He closed the book gently. The end. Alex regarded him thoughtfully, his amber eyes heavy with sleep but still perceptive. "I think I'd like to go to space someday," he murmured. "To see the Earth like that." "I believe you could," Dominic said, meaning it. "You have the mind for it. Would you be proud?" If I became an astronaut? The question caught Dominic off guard, its implications staggering. Would he be proud? This child, who barely knew him, already cared about his approval. The weight of that responsibility settled on him anew. I would be proud of you no matter what you choose to become, he said carefully. As long as it makes you happy and lets you use that remarkable brain of yours. Alex seemed to consider this, then nodded, satisfied. Good night, Mr. Blackwood. Good night, Alex. Dominic hesitated, then added softly, Sweet dreams. He turned off the bedside lamp and moved quietly to the door, where Eliza stood watching. Her expression was unreadable in the dim light from the hallway, but when she spoke, her voice was gentle. You're a natural. Hardly, he said, following her back to the living area. But thank you for saying so. They sat on the sofa, a careful distance between them, the remains of their dinner still scattered on the coffee table. For a moment, neither spoke, the weight of the day's events settling around them. They like you, Eliza said finally. Especially Nicky. He doesn't usually warm up to strangers so quickly. They're extraordinary children, Dominic replied. You've done an amazing job with them. It hasn't always been easy. She tucked her legs beneath her, a familiar gesture that reminded him of quieter moments in their marriage. There were times I was so angry with you, Dominic. Times I wanted to call and scream at you for not being there, for making me do this alone. Why didn't you? Pride at first. Then, as time passed, it just seemed pointless. You had made your choice. I had made mine. She shrugged slightly. And the boys were thriving. I didn't want to disrupt their lives with conflict. I meant what I said earlier, Dominic said after a moment, about wanting to be part of their lives. I'm going to relocate to Portland, establish Blackwood's West Coast operations there. I've already spoken to my executive team. Eliza's eyebrows rose. That's a significant move. It's the right one. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. I don't expect to step into their lives as if the past 4 years never happened. I know I'll need to earn their trust and yours, but I want the chance to try. And if it becomes too difficult, if business calls you away, if being a father isn't what you expected. Her questions were pointed but fair. Then I'll have to make choices differently than I have in the past. He met her gaze directly. I can't promise I'll never make mistakes, Eliza, but I can promise that from this moment forward, Alex and Nicky will be my priority. Not the company, not my father's legacy, not my own ambition. She studied him for a long moment, as if searching for the truth behind his words. I believe you mean that right now, she said finally. But intentions and actions are different things. Then judge me by my actions going forward. He hesitated, then added, I know I have no right to ask for your trust. I'll have to earn that too. A small smile touched her lips. Yes, you will. They talked for another hour, working through practical details, how often he would see the boys initially, what role he would play in their lives, how they would explain his presence to the twins. It was the most civil, productive conversation they had shared in years, perhaps ever. As Dominic prepared to leave, Eliza walked him to the door. 10 o'clock tomorrow? She confirmed. The boys want to show you the botanical garden. Apparently, there's a holiday light display they've been asking to see. I'll be here, he promised. At the door, he paused. Thank you, Eliza, for today, for giving me this chance. Don't thank me yet, she warned, but her tone was lighter than before. You haven't experienced a full day with twin 4-year-olds. Tomorrow might send you running back to your boardroom. He smiled, recognizing the tentative olive branch in her teasing. I'll take my chances. As he walked through the hotel lobby, Dominic's phone buzzed with messages from his executive assistant. Urgent matters requiring his attention. Decisions that couldn't wait. Crises that only he could resolve. 24 hours ago, he would have immediately diverted to his office, regardless of the hour. Tonight, he silenced his phone and slipped it into his pocket. Tomorrow would be soon enough. Tonight, he needed to research botanical gardens, holiday light displays, And what kind of house in Portland might be suitable for a father who wanted to be close to his sons without intruding on the life their mother had built? For the first time in his adult life, Dominic Blackwood was putting something ahead of Blackwood Industries. And strangely, the world hadn't ended. If anything, it felt like it was just beginning. If you've ever had to completely reimagine your priorities or found yourself facing an unexpected second chance, hit that like button. And if you believe that it's never too late to become the person you were meant to be, subscribe to Timeless Love Tales with Mr. Harrison. In our next installment, we'll see how Dominic navigates the challenges of becoming a father to children who have lived their whole lives without him, and whether Eliza can truly trust the man who once broke her heart. The journey of this unexpected family is just beginning, and I promise you won't want to miss what happens next. The botanical garden was transformed by thousands of twinkling lights, turning the winter landscape into a magical wonderland. Nikki raced ahead, exclaiming over each new display, while Alex walked more deliberately, explaining to Dominic the scientific principles behind the light installations with remarkable clarity for a 4-year-old. The lights look brighter because it's reflecting off the snow, he explained seriously. That's called amplification. Amplification, Dominic corrected gently. And you're absolutely right. The white surface bounces the light rather than absorbing it. Alex nodded, pleased with the confirmation. That's why they put mirrors behind candles in the olden days. Mom showed me in a book. Eliza walked slightly behind them, giving Dominic space to interact with the boys, while remaining close enough to intervene if needed. She had been surprised by how naturally he had fallen into conversation with them, never talking down to them or dismissing their questions, no matter how basic or complex. Look, Nikki called, pointing to an elaborate light sculpture of sea creatures. Whales and dolphins. Can we go see? Of course, Dominic agreed, allowing himself to be pulled toward the display. He glanced back at Eliza, who nodded encouragingly. As they moved through the garden, Dominic found himself relaxing into this new role. He answered Nikki's rapid-fire questions about marine life, thankful for a documentary he'd recently watched, discussed the energy efficiency of LED lights with Alex, and even joined in a spontaneous game of I Spy that had both boys giggling. You're good with them, Eliza said quietly when the twins were momentarily distracted by a light tunnel they could run through. Better than I expected. They make it easy, Dominic admitted. They're so open, so curious. I keep waiting for them to realize I have no idea what I'm doing. That's parenting in a nutshell, she replied with a small smile. None of us know what we're doing. We just get better at faking it. The casual intimacy of the conversation, the shared observation about their sons, felt both strange and familiar. For a moment, Dominic could almost imagine an alternate reality where they had raised the boys together from the beginning, where his ambition hadn't driven a wedge between them, where they were simply a family enjoying a winter outing. But they weren't that family. The past couldn't be undone, only learned from. And the future, well, that remained to be written. Dominic, Eliza said, her voice more serious now. There's something we need to discuss. About the boys. He tensed, bracing himself. What is it? They've been asking questions. About you. About why you're suddenly spending time with us. She watched the twins running through the light tunnel, their laughter echoing in the cold air. I think it's time we tell them who you really are. The moment he had both anticipated and dreaded had arrived sooner than expected. Are you sure they're ready? That I'm ready? I don't think anyone is ever ready for this kind of conversation, she said honestly. But they're confused, and they deserve the truth. A version they can understand, at least. Dominic nodded slowly. When? Tonight. After we get back to the hotel. Before they're too tired, but after they've had time to process today. She met his gaze directly. Unless you think it's too soon? The question wasn't a challenge but a genuine inquiry, acknowledging his stake in this decision. It was more consideration than he deserved, given his absence from their lives until now. No, he said after a moment. You're right. They deserve the truth. The rest of their garden visit passed in a blur of lights and laughter, though Dominic found himself studying the twins with new intensity, memorizing their expressions, their mannerisms, the distinct personalities that set them apart despite their identical appearance. Would they look at him differently once they knew? Would the easy connection they'd begun to form change when they understood who he really was? Back at the hotel, after dinner and baths, Eliza gathered the boys on the sofa in the suite's living area. They were in pajamas, their hair still damp, faces flushed from the excitement of the day. "We need to talk about something important," she began, sitting across from them on the coffee table. Dominic stood slightly to the side, his heart racing with an anxiety he'd never experienced in even the most high-stakes business negotiations. "Are we in trouble?" Nicky asked immediately, his expressive face concerned. "Not at all," Eliza assured him. "This is about Mr. Blackwood, and why he's been spending time with us." Both boys turned to look at Dominic, their amber eyes, his eyes, curious and trusting. "Remember how I've told you that your father is a businessman who builds things?" Eliza continued carefully. "And that he's been away?" Alex, always quicker to make connections, looked from Eliza to Dominic and back again. "Is Mr. Blackwood our dad?" he asked directly. The question, so simply put, hung in the air between them. Dominic felt frozen, unable to speak past the lump in his throat. "Yes," Eliza confirmed gently. "Mr. Blackwood is your father." Nicky's eyes widened. "For real? Like, our actual dad?" "For real," Eliza said. "Your actual dad." The twins processed this information with remarkably different reactions. Alex grew quiet, his thoughtful gaze assessing Dominic with new understanding. Nicky, by contrast, exploded with questions. "Why didn't you tell us before? Where have you been? Do you live in a really big house? Can we visit? Do you have any pets? Why do we call you Mr. Blackwood if you're our dad? Should we call you dad now? Or father? Or—" "Nicky," Eliza interrupted gently. "One question at a time, please." Dominic moved to sit beside Eliza, facing the boys. "Those are all excellent questions," he said, finding his voice at last. "The most important one is why I haven't been part of your lives until now." He glanced at Eliza, who nodded encouragingly. "The truth is," he continued, choosing his words carefully, "I didn't know about you. Your mother and we separated before she knew she was going to have you. And afterward, there were misunderstandings. You didn't get our letters," Alex said, his logical mind filling in the gaps from conversations he'd overheard. "That's right," Dominic confirmed, surprised by the boys' perception. "I didn't know I had two amazing sons until I saw you at the cathedral with your mother. That's why you looked so surprised," Alex noted. "Your face went all funny." Despite the tension of the moment, Dominic found himself smiling. "Yes, my face probably did go all funny. It was the best surprise of my life. But now you know about us," Nicky said, leaning forward eagerly. "So you can be our dad for real? And we can do stuff together and everything?" The hope in his son's voice nearly undid Dominic. He looked to Eliza, unwilling to make promises without her approval. "That's what we're figuring out," she said carefully. "Your father lives here and we live in Portland. But he's going to be spending more time in Portland for his work, which means he can see you more often. Are you going to live with us?" Nicky asked Dominic directly. "No, sweetheart," Eliza answered before Dominic could respond. "Your father will have his own place in Portland, but he'll be close by. And I'll be able to spend time with you," Dominic added, "as much as possible, if that's what you want." "I want that," Nicky declared immediately. "Alex does too, right, Alex?" All eyes turned to the quieter twin, who had been observing the conversation with his characteristic thoughtfulness. "Will you leave again?" he asked Dominic, his voice smaller than usual. "If you get too busy with work or something?" The question cut to the heart of everything. Dominic's past failures, his current intentions, the fears of a child wise enough to know that adults sometimes disappeared from your life. "No," Dominic said firmly, meeting his son's gaze. "I won't leave again. I might have to travel sometimes for work, but I will always come back. Always." Alex considered this promise, weighing it with a seriousness that belied his years. "Okay," he said finally. "Then I want that too." The conversation continued, the boys asking questions that ranged from profound to practical to absurd. Did Dominic know how to swim? Yes. Could he help with their space station model? He would try. Did he like broccoli? Not particularly. Would he come to their school for Parents' Day? Absolutely. Did he have a spaceship? Unfortunately, no. Through it all, Dominic answered honestly, sometimes deferring to Eliza when questions touched on logistics or boundaries. They were building something here, a fragile foundation of trust and understanding that would require care and patience to nurture. When the boys finally began to fade, eyes heavy with sleep despite their excitement, Eliza announced it was bedtime. "Can Dad read us our story tonight?" Nikki asked, the new title slipping out naturally. Dominic felt his heart constrict at the simple word. Dad. He was someone's dad. Two someone's, actually. The reality of it hit him anew, overwhelming in its magnitude. "Of course," Eliza agreed, watching Dominic's reaction with understanding in her eyes. "If he'd like to." "I'd like that very much," Dominic managed, his voice rougher than usual. In the bedroom, as he read another space adventure with voices as instructed, Dominic was acutely aware of the privilege he'd been granted. These remarkable little boys had accepted him with an openness and forgiveness that humbled him. They had given him a gift he hadn't earned and couldn't possibly deserve, the chance to be their father. When both twins were finally asleep, Dominic quietly left the room, finding Eliza waiting in the living area with 2 glasses of wine. "I thought you might need this," she said, offering him one. "It's been an emotional day." He accepted the glass gratefully, sinking onto the sofa beside her. "They're incredible, Eliza. The way they processed everything, the questions they asked. I'm in awe of them. And of you, for raising them to be so resilient. Children are remarkably adaptable," she said, sipping her wine. "More so than adults, usually. But don't be surprised if there are questions, concerns, even some anger as they process this further. Especially from Alex. He internalizes things more than Nikki. Like his father," Dominic acknowledged ruefully. "Like both his parents," Eliza corrected with a small smile. "I'm not exactly an open book myself." They sat in companionable silence for a moment, the weight of the day settling around them. Outside, snow continued to fall, blanketing the city in hushed white. "What happens now?" Dominic asked finally. "Practically speaking, you come to Portland," Eliza said simply. "You find a place to live, not too far from us. We establish a routine, maybe dinner once a week at first, then perhaps an afternoon on weekends. We take it slowly, let the boys set the pace. And us?" The question slipped out before he could consider its implications. Eliza's expression grew more guarded. "There is no us, Dominic. Not in the way you're asking. We're co-parents now. That's all." He nodded, accepting the boundary she'd established. "Of course. I didn't mean to imply." "Yes, you did," she interrupted, but without anger. "And it's understandable. We have history. We share children. But that history includes you choosing your ambition over our marriage, and me building a life without you. Those aren't things we can simply set aside because circumstances have changed." "You're right," he acknowledged. "I apologize." She studied him for a moment, then softened slightly. "I don't regret our marriage, Dominic. It gave me Alex and Nikki, but I've worked too hard to build a life on my terms to risk going backward." "I understand." And he did, more clearly than he might have even a day ago. The woman sitting beside him wasn't the same Eliza he had married, the talented but somewhat insecure art curator who had been dazzled by his attention. This Eliza was stronger, more confident, shaped by the challenges of single motherhood and the necessity of standing on her own. "For what it's worth," he added after a moment, "I admire the life you've built, and I'm grateful that you're willing to let me be part of it, even in a limited capacity." She smiled then, a genuine expression that reminded him of happier times. "It's not about limitation, Dominic. It's about finding the right balance." For all of us, but especially for the boys. As he left the hotel that night, Dominic felt both emotionally drained and strangely energized. The conversation with the twins had gone better than he could have hoped, but he harbored no illusions about the challenges ahead. Building a relationship with his sons would take time, patience, and a willingness to prioritize their needs above his own. Something that didn't come naturally to a man who had spent his entire adult life pursuing his own ambitions. But for the first time, those ambitions seemed hollow compared to the simple joy of hearing Nicky call him Dad, or seeing Alex's rare, thoughtful smile when he correctly answered a complex question. Success had a different definition now, one that couldn't be measured in stock prices or corporate acquisitions. The next morning, their final day together before Eliza and the twins returned to Portland, Dominic arrived at the hotel with 3 packages, carefully chosen gifts for his sons. Not extravagant displays of wealth, but thoughtful selections based on what he had learned about their interests. For Alex, a junior astronomy kit with a real telescope and star charts. For Nicky, a deluxe set of magnetic building tiles, far more elaborate than the hotel's limited collection. And for both, matching teddy bears wearing t-shirts that read Portland in anticipation of their return home. "These are wonderful," Eliza said as the boys excitedly examined their gifts. "But you don't need to bring presents every time you see them." "I know," Dominic assured her. "But I wanted them to have something to remember our time together, and something to look forward to in Portland." The day passed too quickly. A visit to the Natural History Museum, dinosaurs for Nicky, geological exhibits for Alex, lunch at a child-friendly restaurant, and finally, a quiet afternoon in the hotel suite playing with the new toys. Dominic found himself memorizing details. The way Nicky's whole face lit up when he laughed, the serious furrow of Alex's brow when he concentrated, the distinct personalities that made them individuals despite their identical appearance. When it was time for him to leave, knowing they would fly to Portland the next morning, both boys hugged him fiercely. "You promise you'll come see us?" Nicky asked, his arms still wrapped around Dominic's neck. "I promise," Dominic assured him. Very soon, Alex, more reserved but equally emotional, studied Dominic's face carefully. "We'll save your letters this time," he said solemnly, "so they don't get lost." The simple statement, with its implicit forgiveness for past failures, nearly undid Dominic. "Thank you," he managed. "I'll write to you both, and call, and visit as soon as I can." At the door, Eliza handed him a small envelope. Their school information, pediatrician details, favorite foods, bedtime routines, everything you might need to know for when you're in Portland. The gesture, practical yet profound in its implication of trust, touched him deeply. "Thank you," he said, tucking the envelope carefully into his jacket. "For everything." "They're your sons too, Dominic," she said simply. "They deserve to know you, and you deserve to know them." As he walked away from the hotel for the last time, Dominic felt the weight of responsibility settling more firmly on his shoulders. But unlike the burdens he had carried throughout his career, the expectations of his father, the demands of the company, the relentless pursuit of success, this weight felt right, necessary, even welcome. He had spent 42 years becoming Dominic Blackwood, billionaire CEO, his father's son and heir. Now he faced a new challenge, becoming dad to Alex and Nicky, a role far more important and infinitely more rewarding than any he had held before. The journey wouldn't be easy. There would be missteps and misunderstandings, moments of connection and periods of doubt. But for the first time in his life, Dominic was pursuing something more meaningful than profit margins and market share. He was pursuing a relationship with his sons, a chance to break the cycle of emotional distance that had defined the Blackwood men for generations. As snow continued to fall on New Year's Day, blanketing the city in pristine white, Dominic made a resolution that had nothing to do with business strategies or corporate goals. He would be the father his sons deserved, present, attentive, loving. He would learn from his own father's mistakes rather than repeating them. And perhaps, in becoming the man his children needed him to be, he might finally become the man he had always wanted to be himself. If you've ever had to rebuild a relationship from scratch or found yourself facing an unexpected second chance, hit that like button. And if you believe that our greatest legacy isn't what we build but who we love, subscribe to Timeless Love Tales with Mr. Harrison. In our final installment, we'll see how Dominic's journey to fatherhood transforms not just his relationship with his sons, but his understanding of what truly matters in life. 6 months later, Portland welcomed summer with endless blue skies and a warmth that coaxed the city's famous roses into spectacular bloom. In a modest but charming house in the West Hills, Dominic Blackwood sat on a patio watching his sons splash in a kiddie pool, their laughter carrying on the gentle breeze. The transition hadn't been seamless. There had been challenges, setbacks, moments of doubt on all sides. But day by day, visit by visit, phone call by phone call, they had built something real, a relationship founded not on obligation or biology alone, but on genuine connection and growing love. Dominic had kept his promise, relocating Blackwood's West Coast headquarters to Portland within weeks of that first meeting. He had purchased a house just 10 minutes from Eliza's, comfortable but not ostentatious, with a yard perfect for active boys and a room for each twin when they stayed overnight. He had adjusted his schedule, delegated responsibilities he once would have insisted on handling personally, and learned to be present in ways that mattered. "Dad, watch this," Nicky called, preparing to execute what he considered a spectacular dive into 12 inches of water. "I'm watching," Dominic assured him, tensing slightly as his more adventurous son launched himself with characteristic enthusiasm. "Careful of your head, buddy." Alex, ever the observer, sat on the pool's edge, methodically filling and emptying a series of containers in what appeared to be a scientific investigation of water displacement. "Dad," he called more quietly, "can you help me measure this? I think there's a pattern." "Be right there," Dominic promised, marveling as he often did at how different his identical sons could be. Nicky, all impulse and emotion and boundless energy. Alex, thoughtful and precise and endlessly curious. Both extraordinary in their own ways. The sound of the patio door sliding open drew his attention. Eliza emerged carrying a tray with lemonade and snacks, her dark hair pulled back in a casual ponytail. Her expression relaxed in a way it hadn't been during those first tense weeks of co-parenting. "Thought you all might need refreshments," she said, setting the tray on the table. "It's getting hot out here." "Thanks," Dominic said, rising to help her. Their fingers brushed as they both reached for the same glass, a casual contact that once would have been charged with tension, but now felt almost comfortable. Almost. Their relationship had evolved over the months, moving from cautious cooperation to something approaching friendship. They had established routines, Sunday dinners together with the boys, joint attendance at school functions, regular check-ins about parenting decisions. They had learned to communicate without the baggage of their failed marriage constantly intruding, to focus on their shared priority, the well-being of their sons. "Mom, Dad's going to help me with my water experiment," Alex announced as Eliza approached the pool. "I think I've discovered something important about volume." "Is that so?" Eliza smiled, handing him a cup of lemonade. "Well, your father was always good at solving problems. I'm sure he'll be a big help." The casual compliment, offered without thought, reflected how far they had come. Early on, such acknowledgments had been rare, guarded, as if admitting Dominic's positive qualities might somehow diminish the validity of their separation. Now, they could recognize each other's strengths without it feeling like a concession. "Boys, drink your lemonade and have a snack," Eliza instructed. "Then maybe we should start getting ready. Grandma will be here in an hour for the birthday dinner." "But we haven't finished our pool time," Nicky protested, water dripping from his dark curls. "And Dad was going to help Alex with his experiment." "We still have time," Dominic assured him, checking his watch, a more modest timepiece than the luxury brand he'd once favored. 20 more minutes of pool, then we'll get ready for Grandma Margaret." The compromise satisfied Nicky, who immediately returned to his aquatic acrobatics. Alex, more attuned to adult dynamics, looked between his parents with quiet assessment before returning to his containers. "Your mother seems excited about the dinner," Dominic commented as he and Eliza sat at the patio table, watching the boys. Margaret Sullivan, Eliza's mother, had been understandably wary of Dominic at first, protective of her daughter and grandsons. But over time, she too had come to accept his presence in their lives. She is, Eliza confirmed, though she's still getting used to the idea of us celebrating the boy's birthday together. It's a big change from last year. Last year, when Dominic hadn't even known he had sons, let alone that they were turning 4. The reminder of all he had missed still stung, but less sharply now. He was learning to focus on the present, on the relationship he was building, rather than dwelling on the time that couldn't be reclaimed. "I appreciate her including me," he said sincerely. "I know it can't be easy, having me suddenly part of family traditions." Eliza studied him over the rim of her lemonade glass. "You're their father, Dominic. That makes you family, regardless of our history." The simple statement, delivered without drama or qualification, touched him deeply. Family, a concept that had always been complicated in the Blackwood household, defined more by obligation and legacy than by love and connection. Now, he was learning a different definition, one built on choice rather than blood alone. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for making space for me in their lives. In your life." She nodded, acknowledging both his gratitude and the effort it had required. "You've made it easier than I expected," she admitted. "You've been consistent, present. The boys can count on you." It was perhaps the highest compliment she could have paid him, given their history. Consistency, presence, reliability, qualities that had been notably absent in their marriage, when Blackwood Industries had always taken precedence over personal commitments. "They've changed me," he said, watching as Alex carefully explained some principle of fluid dynamics to his brother, who listened with uncharacteristic patience. "More than I thought possible." "Children have a way of doing that," Eliza agreed. "If we let them." The conversation paused as Nikki called for their attention, demonstrating what he claimed was a double backflip, but more closely resembled an enthusiastic splash. They applauded appropriately, exchanging the knowing smile of parents accustomed to showing amazement at ordinary feats. "Victoria called yesterday," Eliza mentioned casually as they returned to their seats. "She wanted to confirm the details for her visit next month." Dominic nodded, still somewhat surprised by how well his mother had adapted to her role as grandmother. Victoria Blackwood had embraced the twins with unexpected warmth, flying to Portland monthly to spend time with them, sending thoughtful gifts and handwritten letters between visits. She had even begun tentatively rebuilding her relationship with Eliza, finding common ground in their shared love for the boys. "She mentioned something about taking them to the coast," Dominic said. "If that's all right with you." "Of course," Eliza agreed easily. "They love the beach and they adore her. It's good for them to have that relationship." Another marker of their progress, this easy negotiation of extended family involvement, the willingness to accommodate each other's parents in their sons' lives. 6 months ago, such discussions had been fraught with tension, each decision a potential minefield of past grievances and future concerns. "Dad," Alex called, interrupting their conversation. "I need your help now. The experiment is at a critical stage." "Duty calls," Dominic said with a smile, rising from his chair. "Go," Eliza encouraged. "I'll start getting things ready inside." As Dominic knelt beside the pool, listening intently to Alex's detailed explanation of his water volume hypothesis, he was struck by how natural this felt now. This role of father, this participation in the ordinary moments of his sons' lives. The business calls could wait. The emails would still be there later. This was what couldn't be delegated or postponed. "See, if I pour this much water into this container, and then transfer it to this one, the level rises by exactly this much," Alex explained, his small face serious with concentration. "But if I use a different shaped container, the level changes differently, even though it's the same amount of water." "That's a brilliant observation," Dominic said, genuinely impressed by his son's intuitive understanding of volume and displacement. "You're discovering principles that scientists like Archimedes figured out thousands of years ago." Alex's eyes widened. "Really? Who's Archimedes?" "An ancient Greek mathematician and inventor," Dominic explained. There's a famous story about him taking a bath and suddenly understanding this very concept you're exploring. He was so excited that he jumped out of the tub and ran through the streets shouting Eureka. Was he naked? Nikki interjected, suddenly interested in the historical anecdote. The story says he was, Dominic confirmed, suppressing a smile at his son's predictable focus. Both boys dissolved into giggles at this detail, their laughter bright and uninhibited in the summer air. Dominic found himself laughing with them, struck by the simple joy of the moment. Kneeling beside a kiddie pool, discussing ancient Greek mathematicians with his sons, their faces alight with the peculiar hilarity that only naked scientists could inspire. This, he realized, was happiness. Not the fleeting satisfaction of closing a deal or the hollow pride of acquiring another company, but this connection, presence, belonging. The very things he had sacrificed in his relentless pursuit of success, the things his father had taught him to dismiss as distractions from the real business of achievement. Later, as they prepared for the birthday dinner, Dominic helped the twins change into dry clothes, a task he had initially approached with trepidation but now managed with reasonable competence. He still marveled at Eliza's efficiency, the way she could simultaneously button a shirt, comb hair, and remind about teeth brushing, all while mentally organizing the evening ahead. But he was learning, improving with each overnight visit, each bedtime routine, each morning rush. Dad, Alex said as Dominic helped him with a particularly stubborn button, are you happy that you found us? The question, delivered with his characteristic directness, caught Dominic off guard. Of course I am, he said immediately. Finding you and Nikki was the best thing that ever happened to me. Even better than your big buildings and your company? Alex persisted, his amber eyes, so like Dominic's own, searching for the truth. Much better, Dominic assured him, abandoning the button to meet his son's gaze directly. Buildings are just structures. Companies are just organizations. But you and Nikki, you're part of me. The best part. Alex considered this answer with his usual thoughtfulness. I'm happy you found us too, he said finally. Even though it was at Grandpa Richard's funeral, which was sad. But maybe he did it on purpose. Did what on purpose? Brought us all together, Alex explained, as if it were obvious. Mom says sometimes people can't fix their mistakes while they're alive, but they try to make things right before they go to heaven. The insight, delivered with a child's simplicity but remarkable perception, left Dominic momentarily speechless. Had his father orchestrated this reunion as a final act of atonement? A last attempt to break the cycle of emotional distance that had defined the Blackwood men for generations? Your mom is very wise, he said finally, and I think you might be right about Grandpa Richard. Alex nodded, satisfied with this confirmation. He wasn't very good at being a dad to you, he observed matter-of-factly. But you're good at being a dad to us. So maybe that's what he wanted to fix. Out of the mouths of babes. Dominic pulled his son into a gentle hug, overwhelmed by the perceptiveness of this small person who somehow understood the complexities of intergenerational healing better than most adults. I'm still learning, he admitted, but I promise I'll keep trying to be the best dad I can be. I know, Alex said with the absolute confidence of childhood. That's why we love you. The words, offered so casually yet carrying such profound weight, settled in Dominic's heart like a benediction. Love, given freely without condition or expectation. The very thing he had spent a lifetime seeking in achievement and approval, offered now by a child who had known him for only 6 months but somehow saw him more clearly than anyone ever had. The birthday dinner was a success. Margaret Sullivan's initial reserve gradually warming as she witnessed Dominic's genuine devotion to her grandsons. The boys blew out their candles on a cake decorated with stars and planets, Alex's choice, and dinosaurs, Nikki's compromise, making wishes they refused to divulge despite considerable parental curiosity. As the evening wound down, with the twins growing drowsy from excitement and sugar, Dominic found himself on the porch with Eliza, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and gold. They had a wonderful day, she said, leaning against the railing. Thank you for making it special. They make it easy, he replied. echoing words he had spoken months ago in a hotel room when this journey was just beginning. "They're extraordinary children." "They are," she agreed, a mother's pride evident in her voice. "And they adore you." The simple acknowledgement, offered without reservation, meant more to Dominic than any professional accolade he had ever received. "I adore them too," he said quietly. "More than I thought possible." They stood in companionable silence for a moment, watching as the last rays of sunlight gilded the trees in Eliza's modest garden. So different from the manicured grounds of the Blackwood estate, yet infinitely more welcoming, more alive. "Eliza," Dominic said finally, turning to face her, "I want to thank you, not just for today, but for everything. For raising our sons with such love and wisdom. For giving me the chance to know them. For teaching me what really matters." She studied him in the fading light, her expression thoughtful. "You've changed," she observed, "in ways I didn't think possible." "They changed me," he acknowledged. "You changed me. Or perhaps you all helped me become who I was meant to be all along, beneath my father's expectations and my own ambition." A small smile touched her lips. "Either way, it suits you. This version of Dominic Blackwood. Father, co-parent, human being." The description, gently teasing but fundamentally true, made him smile in return. High praise indeed. Inside, they could hear Margaret reading a bedtime story to the twins, their drowsy questions and exclamations growing less frequent as sleep began to claim them. Soon, Dominic would say his goodnights and return to his own house, maintaining the careful boundaries they had established. But for now, in this moment of quiet connection, he allowed himself to feel the fullness of what he had gained in losing his father. Not just sons, but a kind of redemption. A second chance to define success on his own terms. "Do you ever wonder," he asked softly, "what might have happened if I had opened those letters? If I had known about the twins from the beginning?" Eliza considered the question, her gaze turning toward the darkening garden. "Sometimes," she admitted, "but I've learned that dwelling on what might have been only distracts from what is. And what is, right now, is pretty wonderful." "It is," he agreed, following her gaze to where fireflies had begun to appear, their gentle lights blinking in the twilight. "Pretty wonderful indeed." As New Year's Eve had marked an ending that became a beginning, this summer evening seemed to mark another transition, from the careful reconstruction of broken connections to the possibility of something new. Not a return to what was, but the creation of what could be. A family defined not by conventional structures or societal expectations, but by love, respect, and the shared commitment to two remarkable little boys. In the quiet of the porch, with the sounds of his sons drifting through open windows and the woman who had once been his wife standing beside him in peaceful companionship, Dominic Blackwood finally understood what his father had tried to tell him in that last letter. The true measure of a man wasn't found in the empire he built or the wealth he accumulated, but in the lives he touched, the love he gave, and the legacy of connection he created. Richard Blackwood had realized this truth too late to fully live it, but he had given his son a final, precious gift, the chance to learn it while there was still time to embrace it fully. "Eliza," Dominic said, turning to face her more directly, "there's something I've been wanting to ask you." She looked up at him, her expression curious but guarded. "What is it? Would you consider having dinner with me sometime? Just the two of us." He held up a hand as she began to respond. Not as co-parents discussing the boys. Not as former spouses navigating a complicated situation. Just as two people who might want to get to know each other again. Surprise flickered across her face, followed by wariness. "Dominic, I know what you're going to say," he continued gently. "That we have history, that I hurt you, that you've built a life without me. And you're right about all of that. Then why? Because I think we might have a future too," he said simply. "Not the same one we thought we had before, but something new. Something better, because we're both different people now." She studied him in the deepening twilight, her expression thoughtful. "The boys would be confused. We wouldn't have to tell them. Not until, if there was something to tell." He took a careful step closer. "I'm not asking for promises or commitments, Eliza. Just dinner. A chance to see if there's still something between us beyond our shared love for Alex and Nikki. And if there isn't, then we continue as we have been, co-parents who respect each other and put our children first. He smiled slightly. I've learned that some risks are worth taking, even when success isn't guaranteed. Eliza was quiet for a long moment. The only sound the gentle chorus of evening insects and the distant murmur of Margaret's voice as she finished the bedtime story. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft but clear. Next Friday, she said, my mother can watch the boys. The simple acceptance, offered without drama or qualification, filled Dominic with a quiet joy he hadn't dared to hope for. Friday, he confirmed. I'll make a reservation. Nothing too extravagant, she warned, a hint of the old spark in her eyes. I'm not the same woman who was impressed by exclusive restaurants and champagne. I know, he said, his smile deepening. That's exactly why I'm asking her to dinner. Inside, they heard the twins calling for their final goodnights. The moment of private connection ended, but something had shifted between them. A door opening to possibilities neither had anticipated when they stood in that cathedral 6 months ago, their past colliding with their present in the most unexpected way. As Dominic said goodnight to his sons, accepting sleepy hugs and making promises for their next adventure together, he felt a sense of completion he had never experienced in all his years of corporate achievement. Here, in this modest house with these extraordinary children and their remarkable mother, he had found what had been missing all along. Not just family in the biological sense, but belonging in the deepest meaning of the word. Later that week, as Dominic prepared for his dinner with Eliza, he found himself more nervous than he had been before multimillion-dollar negotiations. He chose a restaurant that was elegant but unpretentious, a place where they could talk without the pressure of excessive formality. He dressed with care, selecting clothes that reflected who he was now rather than the corporate image he had once projected. When he arrived at her door to pick her up, the sight of her took his breath away. Not because she was dressed extravagantly, she wasn't, but because she looked so authentically herself. Her dark hair fell in natural waves, her simple dress was elegant without being showy, and her smile, when she greeted him, held a hint of the same nervousness he felt. You look beautiful, he said simply. Thank you, she replied, a slight blush coloring her cheeks. The boys are already with my mother. They were very curious about why we were having dinner without them. What did you tell them? That sometimes grown-ups need to talk about grown-up things. She smiled wryly. Nikki immediately assumed we were planning a surprise for them. Alex gave me a look that was far too knowing for a 5-year-old. Dominic laughed, picturing his son's reactions perfectly. They miss nothing, do they? Absolutely nothing, she agreed as they walked to his car. It's exhausting and wonderful all at once. The dinner began with a slight awkwardness, both of them navigating this new territory. Not quite a first date, certainly not a reunion of former spouses, but something unique to their particular circumstances. Yet as the evening progressed, the conversation flowed more naturally, moving beyond discussions of the twins to rediscovering each other as individuals. Dominic learned about Eliza's work at the museum, her passion for bringing art to underserved communities, her dreams for expanding educational programs for children. She listened as he described his evolving vision for Blackwood Industries, his desire to create a company that valued people as much as profits, his newfound interest in sustainable development. You really have changed, she observed over dessert, studying him with fresh eyes, and not just in the obvious ways. How so? He asked, genuinely curious about her perception. You listen now, she said simply, not just to respond or to formulate a strategy but to understand. You're present in a way you never were before. The observation, delivered without accusation but with clear-eyed honesty, struck Dominic as profoundly true. He had spent most of his life performing the act of listening while his mind raced ahead to the next move, the next goal, the next achievement. Now, he found himself truly engaged in the moment, attentive to the person across from him rather than the opportunity they might represent. The boys taught me that, he acknowledged. They have this remarkable ability to be completely present in whatever they're doing. I wanted to experience the world the way they do. Children are the best teachers, Eliza agreed, a soft smile playing at her lips. If we're willing to learn. As the evening drew to a close, Dominic walked Eliza to her door, both of them aware of the delicate balance they were trying to maintain, acknowledging the attraction that still existed between them while respecting the boundaries necessary for their complex situation. I had a wonderful time, he said as they reached her porch. Thank you for taking a chance on dinner. I did too, she admitted, her expression open in a way it hadn't been since their reunion. It was unexpected. In a good way, I hope? In a good way, she confirmed with a small smile. Though I'm still not sure where this leads, Dominic. We have the boys to consider. Our history. The life I've built here. I know, he assured her. And I'm not asking for anything more than what you're willing to give. Just the chance to see where this might go one step at a time. She studied him in the soft porch light, her expression thoughtful. Then, with a decisiveness that reminded him of the woman he had first fallen in love with, she leaned forward and pressed a gentle kiss to his cheek. Good night, Dominic, she said softly. I'll see you on Sunday for dinner with the boys. It wasn't a promise of forever. It wasn't even a promise of a second date. But in that simple gesture and the warmth in her eyes, Dominic saw something he had once thought lost forever. The possibility of redemption, not just as a father, but as a man worthy of love. Over the following months, they moved forward with careful deliberation. Occasional dinners alone, conversations that stretched late into the night after the twins were asleep, moments of connection that gradually rebuilt the trust that had been broken years before. They were creating something new, not attempting to resurrect what had failed, and in that newness lay its strength. When they finally told the boys, approaching the conversation with thoughtful preparation and age-appropriate honesty, the twins' reactions were characteristically different yet equally touching. Does this mean you'll be at our house even more? Nikki asked Dominic excitedly. Like, for breakfast too sometimes? Sometimes, Dominic confirmed, exchanging a smile with Eliza. If that's okay with you. It's super okay, Nikki declared, throwing his arms around both parents in an enthusiastic hug. Alex, more contemplative as always, considered the implications with his usual thoroughness. Are you getting married again? He asked directly. No, sweetheart, Eliza explained gently. We're just spending more time together because we enjoy each other's company, like very good friends. But with kissing, Nikki interjected with a giggle. Yes, Dominic acknowledged, feeling a blush rise to his cheeks. Sometimes with kissing. Alex nodded, processing this information. I think it's good, he decided finally. We're more like a regular family now, but better because we have two houses. The simple acceptance, delivered with a child's wisdom, touched both parents deeply. They had worried about confusing the boys, about disrupting the stability they had worked so hard to establish. But children, as always, proved more adaptable than adults gave them credit for, embracing the evolving relationship with an openness that put their parents' anxieties to shame. 1 year to the day after Richard Blackwood's funeral, Dominic stood in Eliza's kitchen, helping prepare dinner while the twins built an elaborate fort in the living room. The scene was so domestic, so far removed from the corporate boardrooms and luxury penthouses that had once defined his life, that sometimes he still marveled at the transformation. Penny for your thoughts, Eliza said, bumping him gently with her hip as she reached for a spice on the shelf beside him. Just thinking about how much can change in a year, he replied, catching her hand and pulling her closer. How life can surprise you when you least expect it. She smiled up at him, her eyes warm with an emotion that had grown steadily stronger over the months. Good surprises, I hope? The best, he assured her, bending to kiss her softly. Finding our sons. Finding you again. Finding myself, maybe for the first time. From the living room came the sound of childish debate. Alex insisting on structural integrity for their fort, Nikki advocating for more decorative elements. Their voices, so different yet harmonious in their shared enthusiasm, filled the house with life and joy. We should probably intervene before engineering principles and artistic vision come to blows, Eliza suggested with a laugh. Probably, Dominic agreed, but he made no move to release her. Eliza, there's something I want to say. Her expression grew more serious, responding to his tone. What is it? I love you, he said simply. Not as the woman I married before or the mother of my children, though you are both those things. I love you as the person you are now. Strong, independent, compassionate. I love the life you've built, the mother you've become, the way you've taught me what really matters. Tears shimmered in her eyes, but her smile remained steady. I love you too, she replied softly. The man you are now, the father you've become, the person who finally understands that true success has nothing to do with wealth or power and everything to do with love and presence. In the living room, the fort debate escalated, drawing their attention back to the present moment. With a shared smile, they moved to join their sons, stepping into the chaos of flying pillows and blanket negotiations with practiced ease. As Dominic helped Alex secure a particularly precarious corner while Eliza admired Nikki's creative blanket arrangement, he felt a sense of completion that no business achievement had ever provided. Here, in this modest house with these extraordinary people, he had found what his father had recognized too late, that the true measure of a life well lived wasn't found in empires built or fortunes amassed, but in the love given and received, in the connections forged, in the moments of genuine presence with those who matter most. Richard Blackwood's funeral had marked not just an ending, but the beginning of Dominic's real life, a life defined not by his father's expectations or his own ambition, but by the love of two remarkable little boys and the woman who had given him a second chance he hadn't known to ask for. As the twins declared their fort complete and invited their parents inside for an official inspection, Dominic caught Eliza's eye across the pillow-strewn living room. The look they shared, equal parts love, amusement, and gratitude, said everything words couldn't express. They had found their way back to each other through the most unexpected path, creating something stronger and more authentic than what they had lost. Sometimes, Dominic reflected as he crawled into the fort to join his family, the most precious gifts come disguised as our greatest losses. And sometimes, the journey we resist most fiercely leads us exactly where we need to be. If you believe in second chances and the power of love to transform even the most unlikely circumstances, hit that like button and share this video with someone who needs to be reminded that it's never too late to become the person you were meant to be. And if you want more stories that touch the heart and nourish the soul, subscribe to Timeless Love Tales with Mr. Harrison. Remember, the greatest legacy we leave isn't measured in wealth or achievements, but in the lives we touch and the love we share. Until next time, this is Mr. Harrison, reminding you that true love stories never end. They just keep evolving into something even more beautiful than we could have imagined.